we've had some interesting and rich discussion on the topic, how mediation works. So let's continue our reading and explanation and discussion. Mediation is, however, not suitable for every conflict. It will not work where a party does not want settlement, either on grounds of principle or because he or she perceives an advantage to be gained in continuing the conflict. Also, where conflict is manufactured for negative reasons and the manufacturers will do nothing to prevent it, nor limit its destructiveness, nor protect those who are not involved, nor listen to reason, nor see other points of view, mediation will be futile. Now let's unpack this statement. It says mediation is, however, not suitable for every conflict. Now you will notice that the last lecture we started looking at why or when mediation works. We very importantly pointed out that mediation is a process that encourages parties to focus on the problem rather than on themselves, the parties. So it separates the people or the conflictants or disputants from their problem. So instead of seeing themselves as a problem, they see their problem as the problem. And so they work together to address the problem and work out options to resolve it. But we don't want to play the ostrich and assume that for every conflict, parties would look at this from an amicable perspective, which is what mediation is about. So we say here that it will not work where a party does not want settlement, either on grounds of principle or because he or she perceives an advantage to be gained in continuing the conflict. And those are two different reasons why people may not want to use an amicable settlement process, because they don't want settlement, one on ground of principle. What's the ground of principle? If you believe that this mediation, this particular conflict that you are involved in affects many other people, and you want a judicial pronouncement on it, so that others may be guided by what the court says, of course, it's not likely that you want to pursue a settlement option because mediation happens confidentially and privately. There are probably thousands of mediations going on every day you don't get to hear about. But when it is taken to the court, it becomes a part of the court record. It becomes a precedent that may guide others in future, especially when a court of a particular jurisdiction, in several jurisdictions, the superior court of records, sometimes called high court in some jurisdictions, when they make pronouncements, becomes a precedent which guide others in future. It's either as a binding precedent for lower courts, or as a guide for courts of similar jurisdiction or even higher jurisdiction. So that's one ground for why mediation may not work. Also, it may not work where a party perceives an advantage to be gained in continuing the conflict. So if you think it's in your benefit to continue the conflict, yeah, why not? You would not want to settle quickly. Of course, this appears to be a negative reason, but it could be why a party would not want to settle. And one example could be financial. I mean, it's, maybe the financial incentives in continuing in pursuing that conflict. Of course, you would not want to use a dispute resolution forum that will push you to end the conflict. We also said where conflict is manufactured for negative reasons, and the manufacturers will do nothing to prevent it. So the conflict is instigated, and the manufacturers of the conflict, the instigators of the conflict, they would, I mean, not want to, they may not want to stop what they've started because they have their own negative, evil reasons, if you like. Again, it's a negative. It's a negative for not using an amicable settlement approach, mediation, for example. Or if the same people would not limit its destructiveness, nor protect those not involved, nor listen to reason, nor see other points of view, mediation will be futile. To propose mediation to them will be futile. So, as I said, most of the reason why people would not, why mediation would not work, are negative, unfortunately. Most of the time, people would use it and it will work for them. If they are people of goodwill, and they value a relationship, they want to see how best they could approach their conflict to bring it to a sensible conclusion. Let us move on. However, where there's a genuine desire for settlement on the part of the parties, chances are high for a mediated settlement. Mediation and amicable approaches to conflict helps parties to realize this potential for amicable settlement. Then I list here general situations which encourage the use of mediation, and they are a predisposition on the part of the parties for a settlement, the existence of an important relationship, the desire for a confidential resolution, the desire for control of the dispute resolution process, the belief that a neutral third party may help arrive at a negotiating position, the likelihood of the adversarial process leading to a loss of face for one of the parties, a dispute in which emotions have run so high that a forum is needed to fully express feelings. Parties are in a conflict probe industry. The source of dispute is not clear. A dispute which affects the interests of a great number of people. A dispute involving complex or technical issues, or parties' desire for a speedy resolution. Mediation also works in the following additional circumstances. Both sides have a good case. There's no great disparity in power. Bad communication and resultant misunderstanding are likely to blame for the conflict. An adverse precedent would be a nuisance for both sides. The case will probably settle anyway, but not before both sides have incurred substantial costs. Both sides need, most of all, an opportunity to let off steam. And finally, where neither side really wants to pursue an adversarial way out of the conflict. And I said, I strongly feel that this was an important factor in the Iraq, USA, UK Spring 1998 diplomatic dispute that Kofi Annan, Secretary General of UN, then successfully mediated. Well, a lot of these points, we've dealt with them earlier on. But I want to speak briefly to disparity of power. While I have said here that mediation is worthy of consideration where there's no great disparity in power, it's also true that the mediator creates or could create or should be able to create a parity of power so that you don't have parties at different level of the power spectrum. No party is disproportionately more powerful than the other. I think definitely that the mediator is able to create a balance of power by his or her presence. And part of the ways the mediator could do this is through caucusing, where he goes from one party to the other, not necessarily making them to stay in the same room or in the same forum environment, simply because one will be overwhelmed, one party will be overwhelmed by the other party because of the power disparity. One other important point is that mediation will work in a case where the conflict will settle anyway. So why waste the years in court when both sides know that they could apply their intelligence and skills and wisdom to get a quicker, faster settlement and not continue to waste their time and resources on what they can, really resolve amicably. Let's move on. Weakness complex. Mediation also works when parties do not regard recourse to it as a sign of weakness. This is one of the primary obstacles worldwide to the use of mediation. If mediation clauses were to become a normal part of agreement, this weakness complex would be overcome. Sometimes, often, I think, when a party proposes the application of an amicable approach to resolving a conflict, the other side may think that they are doing that because they are weak. Of course, it's very wrong because it's a sign of strength to want to resolve your dispute amicably. But because there is that challenge, it might be nice to include in your contractual agreements before conflicts arise. That where conflict arises, we will we'll use an amicable settlement. It could be very specific. You could say net mediation to have it resolved. We'll speak more to this later, I believe, but what I just think I should mention is that you could always name the institution that would name the mediator, so that when there's a conflict, you don't waste time trying to find out who will be the mediator. So you could say, for example, the Institute of Mediators and Conciliators should select the mediator. And so that way, it's already written in who would nominate the mediator that will be used for the process where conflict arises. You could also name a specific person that you both trust in advance, or make that an alternative that this person will mediate, and if it's not available, maybe an institution, name the institution, would then provide the mediator. In the words of my Australian colleagues, MC Ahrens and GM Whitcomb, quote, mediation clauses are necessary in agreements to, amongst other things, avoid a situation where parties are reluctant to propose alternative dispute resolution after a dispute has arisen, lest it appears to admit a weakness on their position. Finally, helpful questions. In order to determine the suitability of mediation in a dispute, parties may ask themselves the following questions. Positive answers to the questions would indicate a need to use the process. 1, are we wasting too much time on this conflict? If you're wasting too much time, you might want to consider mediation. That would help you speed up the process of conflict resolution. 2, is an adversarial approach destroying or clogging our relationship? If it is, you might want to consider using mediation. Because mediation promotes conviviality, promotes amicable approaches to conflict resolution. 3, is it giving us a negative publicity? Yeah, it's very important. If your view in the eye of the public is important to you, you don't want to be perceived as being recalcitrant. You want to see if you can approach the conflict amicably and resolve it holistically. Finally, are we spending too much in terms of money and manpower on resolving this conflict? Very critical. Why waste your time? Why waste your human resources, to on a conflict in the court when you could spend less and money, less on cost and on the amount of manpower that you need or use to resolve the conflict? If you approach an amicable resolution process. I think it's convenient to stop here.